The Colts are on pace to welcome back their young star quarterback against the Dolphins this weekend, but can Miami's own backup quarterback make enough plays against Indy's banged-up defense to steal the win? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is a collaboration of your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts and Miami Dolphins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Crossover Thursday, of course, is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play just $5. What's up, everybody? This is Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts and Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins. And we are talking a big old Sunday matchup this time around. A former old school AFC rivalry, quite a different look nowadays. But man, this I'm still looking forward to this one. I mean, I'm sure you guys are. You're coming off of a bye, and you're just probably looking forward to getting back to some football with guys at least a little healthier after kind of a crazy start to the season.
Yeah, Miami definitely has embodied the 3-year cliche Mike McDaniel likes to throw around of adversity being opportunity. And we kind of got to the third, fourth week of the season and said, no more opportunity, please. We have all the adversity that we need here. This starting quarterback's on injured reserve. This is the last week for Tua for a minimum from an injured reserve perspective. Mike McDaniel said Tyler Huntley really didn't go away during the bye week just because of stylistically how different the core principles are of their passing offense versus a lot of things that he's done. And I think that puts it into context for a team that averaged over 35 points through the first 6 weeks of the season last year, is dead last in the league in scoring offense. And they got about 7 quarters of play from Tua Tagovailoa. So that's definitely been kind of the main central focus for Miami. And there was some reason for optimism coming out of the game against the Patriots, where they ran the ball for almost 200 yards. The big question right now, and I know the Colts have their own respective questions with the run defense with some of the games that they've played this season, but that's the big thing for Miami is can you take that and start to apply that in a week-to-week formula, because their 2 wins right now are against the 1-5 Jaguars and the 1-5 Patriots.
Yeah, for the Colts, you really don't know which version you're getting, because they have kind of taken advantage of matchups like this where the opponent is, kind of ailing a bit, or at least the offenses weren't quite strong, Pittsburgh and Chicago. But then they kind of had their own curse to try and exercise against the Jaguars. Jaguars arguably the worst team in football right now, but they come out and beat the Colts, 37-34. So you don't quite know which team you're getting with the Colts. The rushing success of Miami definitely concerns me, especially if Devin Achane is going to be back. Tackling really has been a concern for the Colts. They were a bit better about it last week in their win over the Titans, but Tony Pollard went and had one of the most egregious long touchdown runs that we've seen from the Colts in a while last week. So you really just don't know what to expect. And I mean, let's not act like, from the outside here, Miami's definitely still got some weapons. I mean, their record is one thing, but this is not a matchup that I feel terrific about.
Yeah, I definitely think for Miami, it's been a bit of a slog getting easy touches to a lot of the weapons. And that includes Devon Achane, who the first couple of weeks, they turned him into the primary ball carrier. And I think what you saw through that stretch of play, though, he was the league leader in 2023 in rushing yards over expectation and yards per carry and missed tackles forced and yards after contact because of being in space. But when they put him into a featured role, and they were without Raheem Mostert for a couple of weeks of that stretch, going down easier on contact, you could tell there was a little bit more wear and tear. And then he takes the big hit and the concussion, and it frees up a fresh set of legs in Jalen Wright, their 4th-round draft choice, who they traded a future 3 to get a draft pick out of thin air to go get that guy. And I think you saw why against New England, where they were able to, whether it was trying to get out on the edges a little bit, but also coming downhill and running at you and just earning some hard yards, right? When the quarterback play is so scattershot and rough And it's not like you have a robust drop back passing game to just take routine pitch and catch and get Tyreek Hill the ball on a bunch of hitches and crossers underneath, like all those things that you would typically associate with, hey, man, that's a really scary proposition for Tyreek Hill. He gets some of those catches in space, you miss a tackle. That really hasn't existed. So I think the game against New England, Devon Achane, hopefully they can reflect on that and say, look, we have our opportunities to get Achane the ball in space and let him be a dynamic player. But our run game has to be a little bit more hard yards oriented. And I thought both Raheem Mostert and Jalen Wright did that. They broke some tackles on the edge and in between the tackles. But I think that was one of the big dynamics that changed in that game. So, of course, with the sample size being as small it is, the question is how much of that was just you played New England versus can you now apply that principle to another team like we talked about a little earlier?
Yeah, I think it's the tough running and guys with contact balance that have really presented a bigger issue for the Colts. You know, the fast guys, you know, if they can get them knocked off their center, then that hasn't been too hard for them to contain. But we'll see. You know, Miami's had a week now to kind of cook up a recipe for this. But defensively for Miami, I mean, obviously no Jalen Phillips. What do you anticipate this defense looking like now?
Yeah, I definitely think the Colts are going to come into this game with a significant talent advantage up front versus Miami's front. Now, I say that Miami's best two players week in and week out have been the two interior guys in Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell. They've been really disruptive. They're playing off of each other well. They're able to generate some pass rush inside. I know against a good Colts offensive line, this will be a good, healthy test for them, but I don't have a great deal of confidence in their ability to kind of press the pocket or threaten the pocket from the edges. Emmanuel Ogbah's day-to-day right now with an injury that's kind of not been specified as we're recording here just a little bit before the Wednesday injury report comes out, but he was disclosed today as day-to-day. Chop Robinson, their first-round draft pick, has been very up and down. He has some nice moments. He's flying all over the field, but he doesn't really have a robust pass rush plan. So for Miami, I think this scheme is going to be a little bit more running the simulated pressures, trying to get free runners either off the edge that are not necessarily your edge player or guys from the second level where you have two guys in David Long and Jordan Brooks who have been able to get into some interior gaps based on if we know structurally we put these amount of guys here, they're going to turn the center this way, and then we can attack the opposing A gap and try to get in Anthony Richardson's face a little bit. I think that's probably where their best pass rush plan is going to come in this game, just because we're still waiting on Bradley Chubb to get back and looking for that week-to-week growth from Chop Robinson.
Yeah, obviously, you know, things would be great for the Colts and Anthony Richardson specifically if he, you know, kind of could maintain a clean pocket. But, you know, that interior is a little, I don't want to say shaky right now because the replacements have done a really admirable job. But we've seen two rookies a lot of the time there in the middle. Tanner Bortolini has had to fill in for Ryan Kelly quite a bit, who did not practice today with a calf injury. And Bortolini, I think, has had to play in like, you know, three or four games to this point. And then Dalton Tucker, who is a UDFA. Will Fries went and broke his ankle against the Jaguars. And so, you know, that's put him out for the year. So right now in the middle, we've seen a lot of rookie play at the interior for the Colts. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, wherever Calais Campbell goes, it seems to give the Colts problems. You know, if he's on the other side,
one of those guys.
Yeah, like it honestly starts with the Colts versus Jaguars curse, and it's kind of followed Calais Campbell wherever he goes. But yeah, that'll be interesting. And the rookies have stepped up and played well, but it's hard to expect that throughout the entire season. But coming up here, you know, what can we expect from the Colts? Joe Flacco's been kind of cooking. Anthony Richardson is supposed to be back on Sunday. So what might things look like? For most of us who like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Luka, Ellie De La Cruz, or Patrick Mahomes rookie card, that's just not in the cards, so to speak. I love collecting, but that's just some serious money to drop. But thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed above was a hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides a real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club's slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform that you gotta check out. Right now, you can get 10% off of your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl, code LOCKEDONNFL for 10% off of your first purchase. And switching gears to basketball, as the basketball season starts to pick up with the NBA, spooky season's getting here, but it also means NBA as well. And, this is Indiana over here on this side, and there's something just kind of nostalgic about going to a basketball game. I actually just went to a concert out at Gamebridge last weekend where the Pacers play, and it just reminded me of like how great of seats are there at that arena. And, I was watching a concert, but now I want to go use Game Time to go buy tickets for the Pacers, and then when their season starts back up. And like I said, it's not just for basketball games or whatever you might want to go. It's concerts, it's shows. I've been to comedy clubs or comedy shows there as well. Game Time also has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff and all that stuff that can just be annoying about ticket hunting to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time's got the lowest price guarantee, which means they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find comparable tickets somewhere else at a better price. They've also got the Game Time ticket coverage, huge for parents or just anyone with a lot of spontaneity in their lives. Means your purchase is covered with the ticketing industry's most flexible customer service policy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, so the host team this Sunday, the Colts, they are definitely an interesting one to watch. They're at 500, and it seems like they're just going to be kind of jockeying for that throughout the season. They did string together a couple wins in a row, but then just, I don't want to say ran into a buzzsaw in Jacksonville because it was a 3-point game, but allowing 37 points to a team that was struggling mightily and had no wins going into it. Consistency is just something that's been super hard for them to come about. But looking at the offense specifically, Joe Flacco, like I mentioned earlier, he's been cooking. He's already surpassed all of Anthony Richardson's stats just within the last, 2.5 games. But Anthony's supposed to be back this week. Again, in that Steelers game, he did look really good before he left with that oblique injury. He has been able to practice for each practice session, mostly limited ones, but got in some full work late last week. And I'm assuming today was a full session as well. But I'm really curious how this whole thing is going to work, because we mentioned the offensive line up front. There might be some holes there. Jonathan Taylor is perhaps still going to be out. He's not practiced since leaving that same Steelers game. His backup, Trey Sermon, is on the injury report with a knee this week. So really interested to see what this offense is going to be. I'm kind of thinking it's going to have to be more of a boom or bust type of thing, unless they can get that run game really working, which using Anthony to run heavily seems like a bit of a choice, obviously coming off of an injury. But, could this be a big Alec Pierce game again? So I've seen, the pass defense for Miami is not grading very well. Are they prone to giving up big plays in the passing game? Because, Alec Pierce, only 13 catches so far this year, but 6 of them have been considered chunk plays.
Yeah, I think the consistency of the safety play has been intermittent for much of the season. You got Javon Holland, who's in a contract year, and at times it looks like he's in a contract year where he's looking outside of the initial structure to be aggressive and make a play, but then you're giving up some leverage as far as, if it's a double move, like the touchdown that was given up to DK Metcalf against Seattle, or even beyond Javon Holland, but Jordan Poyer, who missed this past game and is back at practice to at least some capacity. He's a new player, and you have a new system, and you kind of saw that the long touchdown that they gave up against Jacksonville in week 1 was you had 3 guys drive on the hook route, and they ran a deep over behind it, and Brian Thomas ran right behind, and Poyer's the deep half player. So I think it does tie to some degree into the pass rush. It sounds like Holland's going to try to go. As we were recording this, he spoke with the South Florida media in the locker room, said he's day to day. Mike McDaniel said he wants to play and it might give it a go. But Marcus May's been solid without Jordan Poyer. I think you can make a case that May, who is not the starter coming into the year, has been a better player than Jordan Poyer, just because I think he's a little bit more of a dynamic athlete still at this stage of Poyer's career. I would say explosive plays defensively have kind of been the issue for Miami. And that also goes for on the ground, where they've given up 7 or 8 runs of at least 20 yards on the season. Some of those have been explosives. They gave up an explosive to Ramondre Stevenson. That was a 30-plus yard touchdown run, 4.7 yards per carry allowed, and 8 touchdowns allowed on the ground thus far this season for the run defense. So for Anthony Richardson versus Joe Flacco, I think that's, if you do make that choice with Anthony Richardson, it's been the kind of player that adds a dynamic that Miami has, at least in recent years with their personnel, and you really don't know because they've had negative game scripts all season long, but they struggle with that kind of player. So I think that's the giveth and taketh away of this draw. If it is indeed Anthony Richardson, is, hey, maybe you can stay disciplined and stay leveraged and keep the roof on for the passing game. But do you have the guys on the edge to keep contain against Anthony Richardson? Can you tackle him in the open field? They haven't been a particularly good tackling team in the first 5 games this season. So as I come into this game, even if it's not Jonathan Taylor, even if it's Trey Sermon, or even if it's Tyler Goodson, if Anthony Richardson's going to run the ball 6-8 times in this game, I think that's where the Colts really have an opportunity to create some explosives in this battle, in which I think explosive plays, one way or another, are going to be a big part of the recipe for who wins the game.
Yeah, he's had a lot of really productive, 10-plus yard runs so far. Got initially injured on one as well. So when you're looking at that with him, I've also, just almost been welcoming just, getting around the edge on 3rd and 3 and beating the linebacker to the sticks. That's obviously something he provides that Joe Flacco does have a 20-plus yard run in the last couple of weeks, but, it's obviously not something you can expect with regularity. But no, the run game in general just really interests me, because this probably seems like a good Tyler Goodson game for the Colts, even if Trey Sermon is out there and willing to play, not willing, but able to play. Because Goodson is really the only other explosive runner in the backfield besides Jonathan Taylor. I mean, obviously Anthony Richardson as well, but you obviously don't want to rack up a ton of runs with him. But defensively for the Colts, it looks like the Dolphins are giving up some sacks, but the Colts have really struggled in that department recently. Now, the last 2 weeks, they don't have any sacks. They did get to Will Levis and hit him 4 times last week. But Jacksonville knows to get rid of the ball really quickly against the Colts. It feels like they rarely get to Trevor Lawrence. The pass rush was better last week, but again, no sacks. But you still just have to be able to get there. Like you cannot go these huge long stretches of time. Now they're incredibly banged up. Samson Ebukam, IR, DeForest Buckner, IR. Now he'll be returning at some point. Kwity Paye got banged up. Laiatu Latu's a rookie who's having to deal with a huge, workload now, probably above what was expected. Dayo Adangbo has been their leading pass rusher, their most consistent one, but now he had a hamstring that he left with last week. So, I mean, one of the worst things you can do, give an offense, like Miami's right now, is time in a clean pocket. And I worry about the Colts being able to do that. It looks like Miami is 29th on 3rd downs, even worse on 4th downs, and then they're 31st in the red zone. So it's like, if you give them those things that they have not done well at and allow them to excel there, then that could turn this game into, something that gets unexpectedly, I don't want to say out of hand, because I think it's going to be a close game regardless, but it could just be something that kind of punches you in the mouth and you just don't see it coming.
Yeah, I think the big mystery for the time off is, as we talked about earlier, Mike McDaniel said Tyler Huntley, he referenced no hitch in breaking throws as something that Huntley never really did. And that's one of the core principles of this offense. And that's why the timing and the run after catch, when it's been successful, that's been a big part of the reason why. Well, they've kept calling him, and you could tell Tyler's never done it before because the efficiency hasn't been great. And if you're not having the early down success running the ball, then all of a sudden you're backed up and it's third and long, and you have to try to do those things. You really thought you were going to get Mike McDaniel, part of the Washington coaching staff that was there with RG3, Tyler Huntley, totally different athletic skill set than Tua Tagovailoa. You're like, oh, there's this very obvious low-hanging fruit thing that you can do to try to jumpstart your offense a little bit that fits what Tyler does. We haven't seen it. I think they called 2 zone reads in 2 games, and they were both in the first game that Tyler Huntley played against Tennessee. One of them went for a touchdown, but they left 3 guys unblocked at the point of attack. And the other one was a 4th down bust where Tyler gave the ball and probably had a lane to tuck up and get the short yardage conversion, but the run went outside and they ran right into a corner blitz and it got tackled for a loss. So do you take advantage of the extra week and knowing that it's going to be Tyler Huntley for at least another week? Do they have that in their bag to give you a little bit more early down success to keep you out of the third and longs? And if so, I think that's part of the recipe for a team that's converting on 30% of their third downs this season. And as you said, you throw 4th downs in there, and this team's awful on the late downs. I mean, they just have not had any consistency at all. I think that's what I'm watching most closely from Miami's perspective offensively against the Colts front, like you said, that's really banged up, and Miami's familiar with Raekwon Davis, and I know Raekwon signed a nice contract to go there, and he earned that. And those revenge games are always something that Dolphins fans kind of collectively sigh over because a lot of guys that leave, they play well when they play Miami. So it's like, are we setting up for a Raekwon Davis revenge game here? Because of course we would be.
Yeah, I mean, he's been solid. He's gotten better. He really didn't. It's like he didn't really join the team much until late in training camp. He had this high blood pressure issue that kept him out until literally the last practice of training camp. So he's kind of coming along and maybe hitting his peak now. They might need it. So coming up here, we're going to wrap things up by talking about what these teams need to do for a win, because this truly is a game where either side could pull it out. NFL fans, you can continue the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just kind of think of it as your little betting hub. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So far, FanDuel has this one with the Colts being 3-point favorites, with a total point over under of 43.5. So that's interesting. It's, whenever the Colts have been favored this year, it hasn't been very big. This 3 points right now is kind of status quo for them. But last week they were dogs. So bet accordingly and go to FanDuel.com. And welcome back to Crossover Thursday, which is presented by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So Kyle, let's talk about it. What do the Dolphins have to do to get a win? Because I mean, they're coming off one and then a bye week. So I mean, they could string another one together.
I think they need to have something the Colts haven't seen, regardless of what that is. I think you need to take advantage of having an extra week of preparation to get ready for one opponent and hit them with something that is new and not on film, that you have high confidence, and the guys on the field that you're asking to do it have high confidence in their ability to execute it. So I don't necessarily mean like a trick play or a bag of tricks or anything like that, but you need to have a definitive new wrinkle that is built off of something that you've done. and take advantage of this extra preparation because, as we said earlier, just offense has been hard. It's been very challenging thus far this season to move the ball with any level of consistency, particularly in the passing game. This Dolphins team, they passed for 319 against the Colts, 212 against the Bills, 205 against, or 140, against Seattle, 178 against Tennessee, and then 179 against the Patriots. So I think that's a big piece of the puzzle for them. They also need to not shoot themselves in the foot. A lot of early down penalties, procedural penalties. There's been a big focus in getting up to the line of scrimmage, giving yourself time. For Mike McDaniel, he really has not taken the easy route and trimmed a lot of fat off of their shifts and motions. It's another one of those core principles things that they do, but you're on your third string quarterback and a guy that wasn't on the team at the start of the season. So you've seen some hiccups in that regard. And now you're playing on the road. You played in the road against New England this past game that you played, but being on the road, you can't beat yourself. And that's really what's put them behind the sticks a lot of the times. You see some rhythm and then the drive comes to a screeching halt because they beat themselves. So as I think about Miami, particularly offensively, I think those are the two big things. And then defensively, it's got to be Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell taking advantage of those matchups that we've talked about on the inside. If you have young and inexperienced players that have to play for the Colts, that has to be like the disruptive spot, because that gives you the ability to do a lot more on your back end and properly space the field against vertical shot plays and not give them time to let that develop.
You mentioned rhythm, and that is kind of exactly what I was going to get at with the Colts. Each of these last couple games, they've started out really, really quickly, march down the field, score a touchdown, and then it's like they just hit a wall, and they're searching for long periods of time before they can find more points. Last week they were really hot, and then it was an interception, and then a couple punts. The week before that, it's like they couldn't find any rhythm whatsoever until really the second half. So for them, number one is establishing an early rhythm with Anthony Richardson, because the last game he played against the Steelers, they did go down and score on the first drive, and then they scored again on the second one. So with him, just try not to miss much of a beat. And then he's also had kind of a problem with some turnovers. This year he had the 6 interceptions compared to just 3 touchdown passes. So start fast and try and find a way to carry that momentum. Like, if you get points early, don't just hit the brick wall. I mean, that's easier said than done. No one plans to do that. But take care of that ball as well if you're Anthony. And that goes to fumbles as well, because, I mean, he's very aware that he's the most athletically gifted person around normally. So he can be a little casual when he's strolling out and someone is bearing down on his blind side and just knocks the ball out. So better ball security for him through the air and on the ground. And then defensively, just, try and find that pressure on the quarterback. Now, if Miami wants to get rid of the ball super quickly and kind of follow the recipe other teams have done recently, just do your best to swarm to the ball, because I think that's kind of the counter to it. Like, if the ball is getting out of the quarterback's hands quickly, you're just not going to get to him. So just swarm to the ball and kind of play with the fundamentals. Make sure you wrap up and take it easy with all the missed tackles that have come to kind of doomed them throughout the season. So either side, I mean, obviously the Dolphins aren't getting a lot of kudos lately, but I don't take this matchup lightly. For the Colts, I think they're certainly capable of putting together a complete game. We've seen them even as recently as last week have some really big plays on offense, defense, and special teams. I mean, their punter Rigoberto Sanchez was just named today AFC Special Teams Player of the Week. I don't know how great love to see that from your punter, but I mean, it is what it is. But shoot, I mean, if they could put together another complete 3-phase game, then I like them in this one. But yeah, I'm not going to ask you for a score, but do you feel positively about this one? I mean, it's not like the Colts are a buzzsaw or anything.
I could see the pathways for Miami winning the game, but I just don't think, with who's out there playing and what the coaching has looked like, I think the coaching has not helped their players in some cases with all of this adversity. And you kind of saw it in the final drive against New England offensively, where they called 7 straight runs. And it's like, oh, there it is. Former run game coordinator, really getting dialed in. They're committed to it. And lo and behold, they go down the field to score the game-winning touchdown. Like, Where's that been without your starting quarterback? Like if you told me that they could have some level of the kind of success that they did against New England and Mike was going to call the game that way, I'd feel like, yeah, I think Miami has a good chance to come in here in Indianapolis and win the game. But I don't know that that's going to happen. And because I don't know that, like, my expectations are kind of nil. And then that way you come out the other side of it and you say, okay, this is a continuation of the troubling trend that you had without your starting quarterback. Or you say, hey, this is a nice kind of foundational thing that you can build on now that your starting quarterback's eligible to come back. So that's kind of the frame of mind that me and I know a lot of Dolphins fans are at coming into this game.
As long as everybody has a good time, I guess it's all that really matters.
That's all that matters. Let's have some fun.
Yeah. All right. So thank you guys for making Locked On Colts and Locked On Dolphins your first listen of the day. Next, please go listen to Locked On NFL, now with 2 shows every day. First, you got the madman Tyler Rowland, who kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you don't already, please follow us on all social media. Like, subscribe, review, do all those things that helps us move up the charts. And with that, we will see you guys tomorrow, and hang in there with us throughout the week.